I want to welcome everyone to the Global Wisdom Community Call and welcome you from Earth Tribe and Wisdom School. My name is HeatherAsh Amara, and I'm really delighted to be tuning in, recorded. I was about to say live because I'm so used to that, but recorded from Mexico City from an 18th century building. And I'll be your host for this morning and going to be interviewing my dear, dear friend, Dr. Will Taegel, about his new book, Walking with Bears. So I want to invite everyone, before we start, to just take a moment to close your eyes and take in this moment in time where we're creating a bridge between us, a bridge between countries, a bridge between time. And let's take a moment to connect with each other and to also open to all the possibilities that are here with us as we walk this bridge together. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. And first say thank you so much, Will, for your incredible writing and heart that went into Walking with Bears. I've been reading it over the last couple days, and it's definitely one of those books that you start and you can't stop. So much gratitude to you.
Yeah, thank you. And in some ways, it was a book that I started writing and couldn't stop writing, or I finally had to just put a punctuation mark.
It's a book that is continuing to go on, as really all books do.
Yeah.
So the premise of the book is about your relationship with your mentor and friend, Bearheart, and also your exploration of your history around bridging yourself from Western thinking into more native thinking. And so I want to start with your first meeting with Bearheart and to just read a little quote from it and have you share your experience. So the context is that it was at a conference for psychologists, and Bearheart had been invited to speak and showed up way early and sat under a tree. And when Will went out to invite him into the conference, this was what the statement was. "I believe I will stay here. If anyone wants to talk to me, they can come on over and have a seat beneath this grandmother tree. It is a good spot. I will send out a beam of light, a lament from my belly button to the various folk. It carries an invitation if they are so moved. Those sensitive to light will get the message." So there's the bridge. And what was your experience and what did you learn from that initial meeting with Bearheart?
Yeah, well, that was 37 years ago, and I was 40 years old at the time. And the context was this: it was the American Academy of Psychotherapists, and there were about 250 leading lights from the mental health, psychological world there. And we had the usual practice where we went usually to a beautiful place to hold our summer conferences. And we invited local, quote, color to come and be with us. Like at Bar Harbor, Maine, once we had a lobster fisherman. And in the Appalachians, one time we had clog dancers. And so they had invited Bearheart as kind of, entertainment at lunch. So he had, I was at breakfast, and the organizer of the conference came in while I was eating breakfast with friends and said, "Hey, you got to come out. The guy we've invited to speak to us at lunch is sitting under this tree, and we don't know what to do with him. And he doesn't seem to know what his place is." And so I went out, and as you read there, I saw Bearheart sitting under a tree, and that was his quotation that to me at the moment. And so our first moment together, he's saying, I'm really outside the paradigm that you're accustomed to. And my paradigm is that I'm sending out light from my medicine center, as he called it. We call it sometimes a Dantian. And his invitation to these 250 people was to see who would connect with this beam of light that he was sending out. And so I was intrigued, and I had been searching for a guide to help me reconnect with the natural order, with the earth herself, for a number of years, probably nearly 10 years. And I had been with many teachers, and almost all of them good. And yet there was something that resonated between the two of us. And so I sat down at the tree with him.
I love that. And that was the beginning or the continuation of a very long and beautiful journey for you and for Bearheart that continues up till today. So I'd love for you to share how you're bridging the teachings, your time with Bearheart in the physical, with what the book so beautifully does, is also bridges the present and your continuing relationship with Bearheart after he's crossed to the other side, and that bridge between this world and the world of our ancestors.
Yeah, it goes both ways. And in some ways, that was one of the most important pieces of information that I got almost immediately that he modeled for me. That here you had leading scientists and psychiatrists and psychologists and various forms of therapists from around the world who were gathered there. And I looked up from the tree, and before long, there were about 50 or so people standing in line who had connected with this beam of light, waiting to be with him really in a more of a healing way. And so in this way, the cycle of knowing was in a circle or in a spiral, not in a linear way. And that was the way he was operating. And so the past, the ancient primordial wisdom that he was embodying at that moment was linking with the felt and deep knowledge of the scientists and psychologists who were gathered there. And it was a beautiful moment when the science, that was the 20th century, but the science of the 20th century humbled itself before the tree and before the primordial wisdom of this.
And that there was such a shift in your thinking, and I'm sure everybody's thinking there, because in the beginning, everybody was thinking, this guy's crazy. This guy is not on board. He doesn't know what's going on. And that's often so much the connection that we have with things that we're not familiar with, is that we put it as something that is crazy, as something that's not on board. And yet you and many people there, it sounds like, began that shift of saying, wait a minute, there's something else here. There's something else that's opening here that's out of my paradigm. And it forces us to bridge between the paradigm we're in and basically let go of it in order to step into something new.
Yes. And there seemed to be a natural connection between this cyclical thinking that goes in a circle, and which was what he was demonstrating, and what many of us had felt called to originally, but had covered over with our reductive form of science and thinking. And so almost immediately, I was called to rethink thinking and to re-feel feeling. And that was present at the beginning.
Mm. And how was that for you? Because in hindsight, it seems, what's the right word? Just easy to feel like, oh yeah, there was just this transition. But we know it wasn't like that, that there was probably a ton of struggle and upset and curiosity and worry going on in your brain as you were bridging these two realities.
Oh yeah, well this place where we were gathered is a place near Abiquiu, New Mexico called Ghost Ranch. And so in that setting, it seemed perfectly natural. I was connecting with what you call the big self or the big soul. And so as long as I was in that big soul, I was fine. But a couple of days later, I flew back to Houston, where I was there with my practice and with clinical work and teaching part-time in a medical school and so on. And as soon as I was immersed in my patterns there in the city, it all seemed strange and unusual, and I found myself closing down and wanting to push away from the bigness of this moment that you mentioned.
And what do you feel like helped you integrate it the most, integrate that transition between worlds that you bridge so beautifully now? Because you still have a foot in the world of psychotherapy and Western thinking, but you also have a foot firmly in native thinking and being in nature and eco fields. What do you feel like was the biggest bridge for you?
Well, one thing that he suggested was that eventually that he wanted me to learn how to sit quietly underneath a tree. And there in the heart of Houston happens to have a lot of trees. One of the cities in our country that has many beautiful trees. And I found a small magnolia tree. There were many stately oaks around, but I found a small magnolia tree right next to my office, where I sat and began to communicate. And at first it was like I was doing all the talking with the trees, but eventually I began to feel not only communion, but more important, I began to get little packets of information that helped ground me and provide a basis for this integrating of my scientific side with my primordial or indigenous or earth-based side.
And what would be your invitation for those of us that are in the process of being between worlds, of bridging an old way of thinking with a new way of thinking? What I heard you say was, one, sit and listen, and don't just talk, take in.
Yeah.
What other ways would you support people, especially people that are in stress or in struggle or are having a hard time bridging between two things?
Right. So if you circle back around in the book, which is really one of the most enlivening aspects of our relationship, but also disturbing, that things didn't go like A to B to C to D. But circling back to the book, he was teaching me that one of the first skills in moving out onto the bridge is learning how to wait. And that's what the sitting with the tree was. But another piece of it is, in one of the chapters I mentioned, learning how to be willing. In fact, that was one of the first teachings, that I didn't have to believe, I didn't have to have faith, I didn't even have to know how to love very well at that point. All I had to do is to be willing. And I would say, often I said to myself and said to him, I said, well, you know, I really don't believe that this kind of healing can take place at that time. I really don't believe that there's an underlying love at that time. But I am willing. I'm willing to consider. I'm willing to be present. I'm willing to experiment. with this form of life that was unfolding before me.
Beautiful. And there's a place that I love in the book, and I'll just say that we're pre-recording this because it's Mexico City, and Mexico's unstable internet-wise. So of course I have somebody that's like scrubbing floors or something. So if you hear weird noise in the background, that's what that is.
That's so great. I like that. I like that.
The world is happening around us.
Yeah.
So there's a place in your book where one of the elders asked you about what your day job was. And you were very much like, it's not just my day job, it's my job, hello. And it made me giggle because it reminded me of my book, Awaken Your Inner Fire. And we're so blessed to be launching books at the same time.
Right.
And there's a piece in the book around what's your true work, and how in Western culture we've gotten completely confused thinking that our true work is what we're doing to make money. Whereas what our true work for me is actually what's the quality of energy you're bringing through in every action that you do. So it's not what you're doing, it's how you're being. And I felt that similar resonance with that question to you. And just knowing you now, it's so fun to read the book because you get to meet the old Will, the Will of the past. But it's just, like you said, it's this cycle. I love how you weave so many different stories, past and present, so skillfully in a spiral around the teachings and around your experiences. And we get to meet you at all these different ages. And at that time, you were very much like offended and working not to be offended. And how do we as humans, when we're in this transition between worlds, and bridging our lives, how do we keep letting go of what we've known and stepping into the mystery, which is so difficult, but so important?
Right. Well, one thing is to connect ourselves with community and with people who are accepting of both our many little selves that are running around inside of us, causing all kinds of mischief. How do we connect these little selves with the larger soul of what Jung called the big self? And you're right. And Bearheart was a part of a council of shamanic elders. And one day, you were referring to a part of the book where they said to me, how does a person select a teacher or a healer, a psychotherapist? And I won't even go into my trying to explain to them what a psychotherapist is. But at the time, it was pre-Google, pre-internet. So I said, we go to the Yellow Pages or word of mouth. And they said, well, how do you get to be a psychologist or a psychotherapist? And I said, well, you go to school and get a degree, an advanced degree, a doctor's degree, and then people can read about that, and that's how you find a person to help you. And they laughed and laughed and laughed at that. And so on one hand, as I said this out loud, I could see the humor in it. Yes. And yet on the other hand, I was defending that, hey, this is my main job. And so they said to me, Rolling Thunder, his day job is he's a train conductor. And Bearheart was at one time a radio announcer. and another time he spent a lot of time chopping wood and so on. But they said, we just do that to support the big work. The big work is this connecting ourselves with the love that is present at the heart of the natural order of nature. And so I said to them, well, if you don't find a healer through the Yellow Pages, or I would parenthetically say today through Google, how do you find someone who can really help you connect your little patterns of life with the great sweep of the epic that faith and love are leading us toward across the bridge? And they said something that really changed my life, jolted me. They said, the way you find someone to guide you across the bridge, as I would say, is you walk with them in the forest and you notice how their spine connects with the earth. You notice how what their gait is and how they move. And if you can resonate with someone who has a clear connection with the earth, then you can know they will be of help to you in bridging the distance between your deep soul and how you appear at the edge of yourself.
So beautiful. And so different than how we do things now. That place of the embodiment versus the knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. And embedded in that story is beginning to trust my inner resonance with someone. So I hearken back to the day you and I met many years ago. And I had been invited to a ceremony around a beautiful spring in our community when you lived here as well. And I still recall that you were down near the water and I was up on a bluff, maybe 100 yards away. And there was this resonance that passed between us that really has been the basis of our teaching and working together.
Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking about that too. That was such a beautiful moment of a bridge that happened without words across space that was so strong and has continued to this day. And it's true, that's been the basis of our relationship and teaching. And it's such a beautiful thing when we as humans are able to shift out of our mind and into our heart and start to live from that place of bridging ourselves not with our knowledge, but bridging ourselves with our knowing. And to get there, I'll think of my own journey, like to get to that point was a big struggle with my mind. I had a lot of battles with my mind while I was studying with Don Miguel. And what I found is that it was his love and his steadiness that even when I was in chaos and fear and not understanding what was going on and feeling like my world was falling apart, the world I knew was falling apart, his steadiness is what bridged me to the other side. And the more that those of us that are in a role of mentoring or healing can continue to deepen our connection to the earth and that steadiness, we then become bridges for people to cross over as well.
Right. And you and I just completed a wonderful week together at Teotihuacan where I experienced an incredible coherence of a community that held in its hands this bridging between the little selves and the big self. And that was a feature right away after a couple of years or so of Bearhearts and I walking together. I went on a vision quest, and at the conclusion, it was the first vision quest as a full-blown adult. I'd taken a vision quest just as I was going into college. I hadn't had proper elder guidance. And I think that's very important to remember. Part of what this book is about is the importance of connecting generations and the importance of our having elders who can guide us. And the elders told me at the end of the vision quest, a lot of our tribes have lost their way and lost their sense of community. and in the prophecy, there's the creation of new communities that are interracial and intercultural. They said to me that we need to create community, and you can't just have a vision quest for personal transformation. It's got to lead to a greater sense of community. That's the hope of the earth. That's the era we're moving toward, where community once again is the central teacher, and individual teachers have to be embedded in community. That's what they said to me. And it was really a conundrum for me, because I had already tried to create communities, and this was the late, I tried in the late 60s and 70s, and this was a time when community was shipwrecked on the rocks of sex, drug, and rock and roll. And so when they commissioned me to do this, I was very skeptical, and very slowly began to see that the community of this new era, this new civilization, is deeply stabilized and rooted with our connection with the earth, with the sky, with the wind, with the trees, with the creatures, and that our community is not just a human community, it's a community that embraces all of life. And slowly I began to see the possibility of that kind of extended intimacy.
Beautiful. Yeah, and that brings me to one of my favorite quotes in the book about intimacy. And the quote is, "If walking with bears takes us across a bridge, the other side is more intimate." Together, Bearheart and I were walking this initiatory path of consciousness towards a provisional description of intimacy. Intimacy is deeply and warmly felt in the heart area in such a way that past and future converse in the present. This convergence is so strong that we experience a profound connectedness with all aspects, humans and other than humans. It is a willingness to make yourself known in relationship and to know other. And that intimacy with community, with ourselves, with our ancestors, with our mentors, living and dead, that intimacy with the world, with life that flows through everything, is really what we're learning to bridge, I believe, as humans today. And to step out of the egocentric humans as center of the world, which is so much linear, and step back into the circle of life.
Yeah, and that particular quotation kind of grew out of Bearheart and I walked on this earth walk as bears. First of all, I had bears inside of myself. I had the bear of this skeptical scientific inquiry on the one hand, and the bear of this primordial connection that was being rekindled, this wild heart. But we also had tension between us. And so we had to learn how to face the tension that arose between us. And in our case, the tension was a clash of cultures. So he was coming from one direction and I was coming from another. He had been trained in one way, I had been trained in another way, and we kept bumping into each other. And it was not, it was not all sweetness and light. But out of that bumping into each other and the messiness of relationship, slowly there was nurtured a more mature intimacy that at least I'm hinting at in that quotation that you mentioned.
Beautiful. Just that reminder that intimacy really comes often through conflict, challenges, and butting of heads.
Yeah. Well, you and I just completed, we've been leading pilgrimages to Teotihuacan now for I don't know how long, maybe 6 years or so. And so you invited me into your world and your process, and you were the expert, and I was coming in as a support. And very slowly, you've made room for me to bring my perspective into your world. And occasionally we bumped into each other.
And those are some of my favorite parts when I'm going, this is so not going to work. Part of me, this is so not going to work. And I'm like, wait for it. It's going to be amazing. Wait for it. And it always is.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
It's so fun to be able to laugh at our minds the way that we want things to be, and also to be open that there's all sorts of possibilities beyond what we know.
Right. And that's what's missing. That element of finding common ground is what's so missing in our world today. The ability to let ourselves be known and vulnerable with each other so we can find the common ground that underlies our being together.
Yes, so true. And so, Will, what would be the one last thing that you would like to share with people about your book? Any piece that you feel like you want to gift with people before they have a chance to read it?
Well, the book is actually a part of a trilogy. And one of the first pieces of the trilogy was another book I wrote called Wild Heart. And this book is really, Walking with Bears is teaching me, and hopefully I want to share with others, a trust of that essence which is not controlled by civilization. That essence within us that refuses to live inside the paradigm that we've been presented through our families and our education and our culture. And as we connect with that wild essence, that is that essence inside that refuses to be controlled by our minds and by our paradigms, then we connect with creativity. We connect with a deeper love that's underneath the chaos that we see so rampant in our world today. And as that love comes up through that tuning device, which is our soul, our wild, untamed, uncontrolled essence, then we have possibility beyond imagination even.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Will, for all that you gift to the community and for taking the time to write such a profound and beautiful story. So I really encourage everyone to get a copy of Walking with Bears and to continue this journey that we're all on of reconnecting and bridging ourselves past, future, and all the paradigms that we're in, that it's not a line, that bridge is really a circle that contains everything. Thanks so much.
Thank you, and thank you for your book Inner Fire, and we'll be exploring that early in 2018. We'll dedicate a period of time for that in our call.
Beautiful. So we are very blessed to have some other amazing people on the call that are also going to share. So Will, do you want to introduce them?
Yes, coming up right away, I want to talk for a few minutes with Regina Water Spirit, who was Bearheart's partner, medicine helper, and spouse. And so it's our privilege to have her, and we'll shift over and begin conversing with her at this point. Hello, Regina.
Hello.
And we can see the beautiful desert background there.
Yes, it's really amazing. Gosh, I have too many stories, so I guess I'm going to have to sit down and continue writing about them. You've activated my wild heart once again. And I want to say thank you to HeatherAsh for the profound questions she asked you, Will, because, well, I couldn't really sit here and take notes because that would be against my policy of trying to deepen my ability to listen and just be with it. But I just really appreciate that conversation because it was very, very important to me personally. And I just get very excited, of course, when people are talking about my loved one, Bearheart. You know, Bearheart was married for 54 years to Edna. I knew Edna. I took care of her later in her life. When she passed away, we waited 4 years before we were really together. And Bearheart had a dream at that time, and he dreamt that I went off with another man. Can you imagine? And so he started calling me sidetrack. I said, Bearheart, that's your dream, you know, because I was studying Jungian psychology and teaching voice dialogue. I said, Bearheart, that's your dream. Own it. Well, of course, I found out later, as usual, he was pretty right about his insights, and he didn't go around calling people by names without some deeper purpose, but I didn't know that. So in the name of not getting sidetracked, I wanted, Will, for you to talk to me some more about this question that you raised later in the book. I don't know exactly what page, but who are the bridge walkers?
Yes.
Because I found myself having a lot to say about that.
And I welcome that question, Regina. And mainly, I welcome your presence and your energy as you come across to people around the world, around Mother Earth on this fine day. Yeah, so I would put this back on you as you were reading the book, and as you and I have talked through the years. What would be a central quality that you would look for in people who are able? We all get on the bridge and we back off the bridge, and then we go across, and then we come back, and you know how that goes. But what's a quality that you look for in people who are bridging over into the new era?
Well, first, you know, you just raised the point that HeatherAsh spoke about, is how do we help people who are flip-flopping around, is the term I just came up with. And the word that came to my mind when you were just asking me that profound, deep question that would take me a few months to mull over, the word is honoring. And I think that if we can teach people the value of honoring not just the parts of ourselves that maybe we don't like, but other people, other ways, you know, other cultures. I mean, it sounds kind of trite these days to talk about this kind of a subject with everything that's going on. But on a very personal level, this idea of honoring different energies, different energy patterns is so very important. You know, we make up our minds about a person or a place or a thing, and then it just gets planted into cement, and that's the way it is for us. And I think is so important to be willing as you use that word in such a good way that Bearheart taught so much about, to be willing. And I'd like to give an example. I have a young uncle. I call him my baby uncle because he was my grandmother's last 11th child born after me. So he's 73, I'm 75. So he's in a rehab home here in Albuquerque. He had a very serious infection, still has it, operation on the lung, taking out a part of the lung. And I have a real problem with him because he's pretty judgmental, you know, about a lot of things, especially about America. He lives in Oaxaca now. He moved to, I say he defected. He went to Oaxaca, which is a really beautiful place, I hear. Anyway, so I've been practicing sitting in front of him and really allowing myself to meditate and go into that judgment and see how that sustains him, gives him energy, and in some ways gives him life, which he needs desperately right now. And that comforted me. And also, of course, to look at my own judgments. So
yeah, that's a great example. And a bridging between the more aware part of ourselves and shuttling, bridging into the judgment and coming out and not getting trapped in it. And since I mentioned judge, before we finish today, I'd like for you to tell the story about how you got your vocational testing to be a bridge inspector.
oh, really? Well, I think I should give the shorter version of that.
Yes.
The short version is my mom, my dear mom, had passed in 1990. And with all my studies and my experience with Bearheart, I had been with him since '83. I was lost. I was just lost. And I had been told by the grandpa, WOLF, I had been told by him in a dream that this would happen, but I didn't take it seriously in what was that, 1981, when he told me that. So I was lost. I went to the Department of Labor, if you can believe it, and I took a 2-hour test on a computer to find out what my vocation should be. I think I'm getting a little embarrassed here of my stupidity, but actually, you know, I was being watched out by the Creator. It was a very good thing because now I'm getting to tell the story to so many people. Anyway, the lady said that I would be a good bridge inspector. And so I went home and I said to Bearheart, I said, well, she thinks I should be a bridge inspector. So he just kind of, he had this little smile that went off to the side of his mouth like that. And he never said another word about it. And 2 years from there, we were driving across a bridge to a place in Oklahoma. And he said to me, pull over, pull over. So I knew by that time to follow his instructions. I pulled over, stopped the car. I thought, you know, somebody was dead in the road or something. And he said to me, I want you to get out and I want you to cross that bridge and inspect it carefully because I don't want anything to happen today. And then come back and tell me what you saw. Well, I guess I'm worldwide, but I'm going to say it anyway. I almost peed in my pants. It was just too funny for me. So I have a whole dissertation on walking across bridges that I'm not going to give right now. But I would like, I was going to do this, it was on my agenda of linear thinking, and I would like to follow through with it, Will, if you would let me honor me by honoring you, Will, and this book, and Judith, for just maybe 15 seconds. Is that good with you?
Go ahead. I'm giving way to a bridge inspector.
Yes, please do that. Might have to call my technical person. Oh, here he is. Is it on?
Yeah, I think so.
Connected to Robert Fritz's I'm Act 3.
Time in life, and to let that person know that the spirit, Wakanda, is with them. The second song deals primarily with that person's life, like he's going uphill all the time. When he gets to the top, then another hill looms up and he's climbing again. Look like that's the way his whole life has been. So the prayers are such that the hill will level so that he can have an easier time of life for a while. Wakanda hewa ono mayukito na hayowe tanike yana henai. Wakanda hewa ono mayukito na hayowe tanike yana henai. Wakanda hewa ono mayukito na hayowe tanike yana henai.
That's for you, Will and Judith, and especially for the opening of this beautiful book that I have to say I'm a little proud to have been so patient in waiting for it to come to light. I did do a good job on waiting, didn't I, Will?
You did, Regina, and thank you so much for that, and thank you for bringing Bearheart's wonderful voice. It brings tears to my eyes. What a wonderful gift you are, and what a wonderful community we're creating, even through this technology and channeling that into this moment. I'll come back perhaps at the end, but I'm going to shift now to Bodie Simpson over in Maine. And Bodie, I wanted you to be here because you're such a bright light, and also because you're newer to our community. And I wanted you just to give your impressions of the reading of the book and the joining of this conversation today.
Hi, Will. Thanks for having me. So I was a little nervous, so I did jot down some notes while everybody was talking. So I hope that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. So Will's story really resonated with me because I'm also a psychotherapist, and as Will mentioned, I'm just beginning my journey of deepening my connection to the earth and building my bridge. And I have felt very disconnected from elders or a sense of community or guidance. And I really just loved how you shared your journey of these felt experiences that I feel are hard to put into words, but in some way, the story that you wrote, it was as though you were speaking directly to me. I could really hear the message. And what I loved is how you noticed that you needed a teacher, and how you noticed when your teacher arrived, and how you took time and just followed your intuition, even though you had other plans. You were supposed to speak that day at a conference, and you listened to your heart and you stayed with Bearheart. It was as though you did feel the sacredness of the experience. And I think what I also gained from your book is that there's so much potential and growth in finding a teacher and a community that resonates with you and where you feel you can be yourself and feel love and support. Yeah, I'm having a lot of experiences right now because my heart is so open, and I'm so honored to be part of this group. And as Regina and HeatherAsh were talking, it's all heart centered. And the thought that kept coming to my mind was really just living life seeing with our hearts. That's the bridge. And it's, for me, it's so exciting to be part of a community that I can talk about these deeper experiences with, because up until now, I feel like I haven't had people that can speak that language, the language of the heart. And so yeah, I just want to say I really resonate with the work that you've done in this book. And I want to thank you for writing it and for including me.
Yeah, you just mentioned something that's very important, Bodhi. Maybe one of the most important characteristics as we move onto the bridge, and sometimes we get across to the other side, and when we get across to the other side, what we yearn for is to be in a circle of humans, and more than humans, where our stories can be heard. And that's what I picked up from you as you were talking. That what does that feel like inside when you can tell your story without editing it too much?
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to put into words. It feels safe. It feels like love. And it makes me sad that up until now, I haven't had that experience. It feels very healing.
Yeah. And you're actually working on writing some children's books along this line.
Yes, I am. And it's funny because my daughter is 7, and she always reminds me that grown-ups are just big kids. So I'm writing through my inner child to everybody's inner child. So it's, as I'm writing it, I feel like I'm writing it to humans, but in a really basic way, which actually your story, I'm not saying it's childlike, but it was written in such a clear way that I got it. And I feel a lot of the books in the past that I've read, they were so mysterious that I could read a page at a time and then I'd have to digest it for like a month. So I do appreciate, and maybe it's just because I resonate with the story, but I feel like that's what I'd like to do, is what you did, write a story that resonates with people, that they can, it's almost like a felt experience as they're reading it, an embodied experience, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. And in a way, there's a certain innocence that comes with the basic connection with the earth, and a certain, as you picked up as Regina and I were talking, there are several places in the book where it's evident that the main thing the shamanic teachers were wanting to convey to me is not to take myself so seriously. And there's a quality of being a childlike, that we can laugh at ourselves.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's like, I guess that's part of the safety within the circle, is that we all see each other for who we really are. We don't have to act a certain way. We don't have to pretend. We can just be who we are. And that's how children are. They're authentic.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being willing to be here today, since you're new to this process and you bring a freshness that I find quite appealing and connecting. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah. So I'm going to go across the pond a bit, across the ocean to Sarah Whiteley in the UK. Sarah, welcome to our circle today.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah. So just want to begin. Where did you connect, if at all, with the walking with bears?
Oh, I connected really deeply. It felt like going into a huge multi-dimensional web with the different storylines, following different journeys of yours, but the different contexts that were ignited. And certainly, and Bodhi spoke this as well, there was a sense of accompanying. I was accompanying you and also being enlivened through my own journeying. So there was a lot of, I felt a deep sense of connection. There the relational field felt very alive. Had a lot of echo in terms of my own journey too. And certainly the chapter that really inspired me in particular was the Crossing the Bridge chapter. And yeah, it resonates very much with my own work, but for sure, just feeling that sense of the relevance of witnessing someone who has gone through such a depth of journey as you have, and has taken the time, because I know what it's like to write, to take the time to articulate in a really clear way. And for sure, I felt the arc of Mother Tongue, Wild Heart, and this book. And interestingly, you know, the tongue being the voice, the heart center, and then the sense of the feet, the groundedness. So even the books are an arc in themselves, and really felt that bridging that was very significant. And for sure, it's ignited a fair number of dreams for me. So it's inspiring the daytime, but also the dream time, including a dream from last night, because I invited the elder who you connected with in that particular chapter, Crossing the Bridge, a white feather. And so I invited some guidance from the field, and actually found this and placed it into the moonlight to see what would come through. And for sure, I think I'm going to be working with this particular dream for some time, because I feel like I got some new information and some bridging information that's very, very important.
Well, gosh, thank you for that. I don't know of anything that I would rather happen than as people read this book and listen to this broadcast, that they would have dreams that would be stimulating of crossing the bridge, not only for yourself but for others. And maybe you'd say a little bit more about this chapter that you connected with and your own work.
Mm-hmm. Sure. What was so significant in this particular chapter for me was the certainly your connection of going to a particular place that has a lot of meaning. So the ceremony site in your home field. And then opening and allowing information and insight to come through. And at that time, having the vision, the story coming through around White Feather and being a Hopi elder. So I'll just speak of some of the elements that really connected with me. And the sense of the prophecy that has been held by the Hopi Indigenous community, and this sense of it's time to share it. It's been held and protected and worked with, but it felt for him the right timing. It was necessary because the significance of the cascade and the turbulence was so immediate that he felt it was his responsibility. Early 90s, or on the cusp. It was this very sweet story of hitchhiking in New Mexico and having the sense of, I need to share this. And he flagged down, I think it was the only car for some time. And he sat quietly to sense, is this the person to speak? So there was this sense of having information and having something to share. You've got to find the timing, and also the place and the person and the modality through which to share. And so with David Young, who was Presbyterian minister, he sensed it was the person, and he said, I have something to share with you. And he spoke on their journey as they were traveling. And then he said, thank you, I'd like to get out. And they never saw each other again. And, David Young, as you wrote, was that? And then stopped and wrote. and his sense of, what do I do with this? Where do I share it? With whom? Who can hear this? And through his different networks, he sensed it was with his youth group. So it was the connection of the young people. So it's from the elder to the, I don't know of his age, but he was an older man, and it was the youth that he sensed was to share in those countries. And so he printed it out and shared it with the youth group. And then later on, so again, another link, another bridge, was two of the group that had received that information. You were sitting in a circle with it, and felt the vibration and the connection within yourself. And I felt the same. So this arc of the knowledge, the knowing, as HeatherAsh spoke, was shared, and the ripple effect. And here we are, and the ripple effect is going out once again into this community. And for sure, there was a lot ignited for me, including this dream. I asked very specifically. I actually read the chapter again last night, and I brought in the feather that I found at some point. It's been sitting on my altar, and I asked for guidance of what this means for me. And I got a very, very powerful dream. So there's something about recognizing the timing and the significance and the modality through which to share what it is we need to share, and knowing that for White Feather, he knew it was important, and in that time, from the time that you heard to the time of this book now coming through, has been several decades. So even the timing of when something is ripe and ready, and in our own readiness, not just the imperative that is so here, but the timing, and trusting that in sharing, for those who, the hands and hearts of those who need to hear this, the book will find them. This call will resonate out in different ways, and the conversations that happen beyond our imagination. So
well,
yeah.
thank you, and that's exactly right. You know, that was 1958,
Mm.
and before probably most of the people on this call were born, and yet it's timeless, it's eternal, it's not local. We're stepping, as we step across the bridge, we realize that this unfolding that's in our midst is beyond our usual way of measuring. And really, that was Einstein's insight as well.
Yes.
And we have an opportunity, as we are at this moment, experiencing that. And when Regina played Bearheart's voice and his singing, it was timeless. And we're in this together. Dan, I don't know, could you bring Rod Chambers in from China? We got time for one comment from China, if we can get Rod Chambers in. Okay. Dan says he's on his way, all the way from China, right into our midst. Hello, Rod.
How's it going, Will?
Hey, my good man. It's so good to see you.
Man, listen, you know, I was really concerned about speaking, just because there's a lot that has transpired since the last time that you all saw me a few months ago. And so I won't get in all the details, but I'll just say that I had a dream about brown bear, I want to say a few nights ago. And so I'm still kind of isolating and pulling the pieces apart and really trying to understand it. But I will say that today's class gave me, it gave me a lot. I just say it gave me a lot. And so thank you for sharing. And I look forward to purchasing the book.
Hey, my good man, my heart lifts up just to see you there. Now, just to tell our circle here, where in China are you?
Okay, well, right now I'm still currently in Texas, but I'll be leaving back to China probably next week.
Oh.
And so the city that I'm in is called Wuxi, Wuxi. It's about 45-minute high-speed train west of Shanghai. So I'm in the east of China.
Oh, good. Well, so good. It's so good to see you and have you as a part of our time together.
Definitely, likewise. Thank you.
Okay, Rod. Okay, so let's circle back around to before we finish and have Judith sing, to have Sheila come on and tell us about next gathering, which is December 9th, and stay with us just another couple of minutes, because I think you're really going to want to hear what Sheila has to say.
Hi, everybody. We are so excited. December 9th at 2:00 is our next call. And Joan Borisenko, a Harvard-trained medical scientist who also happens to be a natural mystic, her book, Minding the Body, Mending the Mind, has sold 500,000 copies. Well, she is our guest on our call December 9th. Joan and Will have written a journal article that proposes a new approach for addiction recovery. The theme for the December 9th call will be the bears in the middle of the living room: climate change, addiction to Western civilization, nuclear war, and prophetic hope and love.
Okay, you want to hold up the book there?
Okay. And look what we have available today on Amazon. Is this beautiful book of Will's, Walking with Bears on Bridges to Earth's New Era. And you see right there's Bearheart, there's Will, there's a beautiful rock painting that Will has done. And I have to do this because I just love it so much. On the back cover, we have this amazing photograph of Bearheart and Will.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And that's a photograph that Regina took, and it's been touched a bit, but even so, you can feel the spirit coming through. So I want to thank you, Regina, for being here, and thank you, Bodhi, for being enriching us, and thank you to Sarah and Rod and all of you who have joined in this. I'll tell you, this is really encouraging to me that we can gather once a month as an international earth-based community and have many different perspectives from many different cultures, many different accents. We're here together. May the circle be unbroken.
Inga.
Hey, well, I'm just thinking about Bearheart and hearing this beautiful voice. It just brought tears to my eyes, and my heart just opened up to him and his memories. So I sang for my mother when she passed away, because it's just so apropos, I think, for the other side. Just was bridging to another world. Definitely. The river is flowing, flowing and growing. The river is flowing down to the sea. Mother, carry me, your child I will always be. Mother, carry me down to the sea. Aho.
Aho, everybody. Much love, big love, and we can do that. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Inga.